Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Art 192, Photoshop/digital imaging for the fall semester 2021. Anyway, we're working with Camera Raw right now, and we're going to finish up this lesson. It's the second half of the lesson, and what we have here is a before and after of a young woman. It's a very nice photograph, but we're going to make some fine tune it, make some improvements on it. We're going to do it both in beginning in Camera Raw and then switching to Photoshop and then go back to Camera Raw and then back to Photoshop again and finish it up. So if you look to the right, you can see that we have our Camera Raw image. If you recall from the last Wednesday, I said that every company has a different file format for their Camera Raw. This is a .nef file, and that would mean that this was taken with a Nikon camera. The Canons are CRW for Canon Raw. Anyway, just to give you, let you know, give you a little bit of extra information. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to deselect. I want the raw. And again, as soon as you double click, and I also in Adobe Bridge, and it doesn't matter where you are. If you have a raw file format and you double click on it, it will not open directly into Photoshop. It will open in Camera Raw. So I'm going to double click on it. Okay, and there we are. It's a little dark. It's a coloring of the image needs to be adjusted a little bit. So we're going to work with some basic settings first. Okay, and we're not going to, let's see, I think we're going to work with it as shot. No, we're going to change the, if I recall, we're going to change the white balance right now. So I'm going to click here, and we're going to click in one of the lightest areas here. And if I click here, or if I click down here in her dress, and one of the widest areas, you'll notice that it adds a bit of contrast to it. It changes the temperature and the tint just a tad. I think that's fine for right now. If I click here, that's probably going to give me another setting. So I'm good with that. We'll leave it that for right now. And then what they want us to do is to change a few things. We're going to boost the exposure. We're going to change the contrast a little bit, and we're going to increase the clarity just a tad. So just some minor tweaks initially. So the exposure from 0, we're going to boost it up to 0.3. Whoops, a little bit too much. 0.3. If I have continued to have trouble with this, I just come up here and type it in 0.3. Okay. And then the next thing is to add a little bit of contrast. So we're going to boost that to 15. And then the last one down here is clarity. And clarity, we're going to boost it to 8. Okay, so there we go. So you can see already it's making some, considerable changes to this. Some of the color cast from the lighting that existed is changed. We have greater contrast in between the lights and darks and that sort of thing. But what we're going to do now is we're going to send it over to Photoshop, but with the option of coming back to the Camera Raw a little bit later. So when we do that, down at the bottom where it says open, if I click here, you can see that I can say open as a copy, open, or open as an object. I want to open it as an object. As I open it in an object, that will give me the option of going back at any time to Camera Raw and continue to make adjustments. So I'm going to click as an object. We'll come back over in a second. It's going to open it. There we go. So now it's open as an object, and you can see that we have that little object symbol there in Photoshop. So I've switched from Camera Raw to Photoshop. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add an adjustment layer to this, and it's going to be levels. So if I click on levels right now, Okay. What I want to do is I want to click on this little button here to make sure that our diagram here is a little bit more accurate. So I can click there. And then once I do that, then I can come in and I'm going to change some settings. We want to move the value from, let's see, where are we here? From 255 down at the end to 242. So normally you just, if you see this little clipping here, if you really want to exaggerate it, notice how it really blows it out. But as I slide back, it's generally where you see this huge shift here is where you want to make the change, after you've made that adjustment. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the midtones a little bit. And instead of, we're going to change it to 0.9. So I'm going to go back here. So make that a little bit, that adjustment just a little bit, and we're good to go. So now what we want to do is we want to edit a couple more adjustments, a saturation adjustment in Camera Raw. So to do that, we have to go to Layers, and we click right here, double click, and it takes us back to Camera Raw. And now what I can do is I can switch from Basic to Color Mixer here. And in Color Mixer, what I'm going to do, I'm going to reduce the reds, make sure that, yeah, reds are reduced a couple of points. That we're going to reduce the oranges a little bit by -10. So we don't want her skin to be too orangey, too reddish. And the magenta is -3. And then when we're done, we click OK, and that takes us back to Photoshop. Okie doke. So we're good to go. One thing that I didn't do in the color mixer, I could have clicked the tab to see the before and after thing, but that's not really important at the moment. You can preview the changes that you've made if you wish. So that's something that I forgot to do. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the spot healing brush, and we're going to make some changes here. So instead of this is how I would do it. I'm going to do a little bit differently than the book. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a copy of this layer first. Okay, so let's do that. And now what I'm going to do with a copy is I'm going to rasterize it. And when I rasterize it, then I can go ahead and I can use some of the tools that are available to me over here, like the spot healing brush tool. Okay, so now to take this smart object and to rasterize it, I go to Layer, and I go to Smart Objects, and I say that I want to rasterize this particular one that's selected. There we go. Now it looks the same as the other at the moment, but it enables us to make changes to it that we wouldn't be available to us as still a camera raw image or as a smart object. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and we're going to begin to do some retouching here. So let me come down here. Come on, where's my cursor? Zoom in. So the first thing that we're going to get rid of is this little item that she has, a little diamond in her nose. So I'm going to go ahead and use the spot healing brush here, make a little bit larger one. And we'll go ahead and click and get rid of it. Whoops, deselect, wrong tool. Wrong tool. Where are we here? That's not the one that I want. There it is right there. That's a spot healing brush. So I'm going to come back over here. If I can see my cursor, let's go ahead. I'm enlarging the brush a little bit. I was using it not too long ago for something else. So that gets rid of that. we can get rid of that one. You can get rid of some other blemishes. You know, don't go overboard, leave some of them. Otherwise, it does look very unnatural if you remove too many of them. The one on her neck, we will leave, that sort of thing. Okie doke. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going, after we use the spot healing brush tool, and that's really kind of adequate. We need to do any more than that, is that we're going to enhance the image a little bit further using the dodge tool and the sponge tool. So dodge tool will enable us to whiten her, I think it's called the sclera. It's the white part of her eyes, and to get rid of the bloodshot aspects of it. And then we can enhance her, the blueness of her iris a little bit. Okay. So to do that, we're going to switch over here to the dodge tool. And we're going to, you know, I have the exposure set to 10%. We can increase that a little bit to maybe 20. Okay. And I'm going to deal with that. I'm going to leave it on highlights for the moment and see if that doesn't do the trick. So let's change the, I should have a soft brush. That's fine. They suggest 35 pixels, so I could change it a little bit. I have it set to 45. So they're giving us very specific pixel sizes, and the hardness is set to 0. And the mode that we want to use is to saturate. So we're going to change the blue color first. So instead of mode up here, let's see. For this, I want to, for this brush, hold on here. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got, instead of I don't want that. I want the sponge tool. There we go. And it's set to desaturate right now. We want saturate. And the flow can be set to 50%. Doesn't need to be quite so much. You can use higher, lower, whatever works for you. There we go. And again, I'm going to change the brush size since we've changed the settings to 35 pixels. A little bit larger. Now we can come over here, and in her iris, we can go ahead and we can make them a little bit bluer. Not a lot, just a little bit. Don't have to be that precise. But very subtle changes, as I said. So that's what we're going to do there. What I want to do next, though, is over here, is we want to change the exposure, and we're going to, again, use the dodge tool now, which is hidden under here, dodge tool. So I did it in a slightly reverse order than they did. They used a little bit larger brush, so I'll go ahead and I'll follow along with them. Where they're going all the way up to maybe 60 pixels. There we go. And exposure, 10%. And what else are we going to do here? We'll just leave it at that. So now I can come over here. You can see that the whites of her eyes are just getting a little bit lighter. If you don't like that, undo it, come back just a little bit. And it makes the whites of her eyes just a little bit brighter. Now, if I've gone too far, I can always, go back. And let me bring up the history to see where I left off here. I'm going to end up with the sponge tool, and I'm going to use the dodge tool once again. I may have gone overboard just a little bit, whitening her eyes. Again, it's a It's not chiseled in stone. It is, you know, but you really do notice a difference if you go overboard with it. Okay. So again, we've made some minor changes here. We also probably, when we're done, I probably want to adjust the skin tones a little bit. So let's go ahead and work with that. What I want to do is I want to zoom out so we see all of her. Now I wanted to, use a little bit. There is something I forgot. We're going to highlight her brow just a tad here. So I'm going to go ahead and just ever so slightly here. So it pulls it out just a little bit. That was one little thing that I forgot here. Very subtle, okay? Not anything, big deal here. Let me move this over a tad. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make some additional changes to this. We want to, the camera that was used was really good and you can see every little pore on her face, but maybe we want to soften that just a little bit. So to do that, we're going to go under select. And what we want to do is I want to select color range. Okay. And we're going to change the fuzziness to 10. I want to change this from, let's see, I'm going to leave selection. And I want to be able to detect faces. So if I select local colors and I say detect faces, okay, so that should get me closer. Let's turn off local clusters. Sampled areas. I'm going to use skin tones and detect faces and set it to fuzziness of 10. And that will get me really where I need to be. So again, where that was again, let me click OK, and you'll see the selection that's made. Is that we go to select, and you go to color range, and then make sure that you select that you're looking for skin tones. And it will only select the skin tones and nothing else. So with that selected, with our skin tones selected, what we want to do is after we've selected everything, is that we're going to add another adjustment layer here. And we're going to use curves. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to pull this down just a little bit or increase it just a little bit. Let's see what I want to do here. I want to pull this down just ever so slightly. Just a little bit from the center here to reduce it just a tad. So actually, you know what? I goofed. I'm going to undo that. So that goes back. Instead of RGB, I only want to affect the reds. And you can affect red, green, or blue separately. So I just want to affect the reds, and I'm going to pull it down just a tad. Again, so it's just a little bit less red here. We don't want her skin tones to be so red. That was one of the things that I was talking about. So now that we've made that change to that, okay, what we can do is we can take this area here, and we can go ahead and we can also blur it just a little bit. But before I do, I want to make a copy of this layer. So let's go ahead and take this layer here. Let me go ahead and make this selection here. So let's go ahead and select this again. Whoops. Wrong key. Okay, so I don't want everything selected. I just want her skin tones selected. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take both of these, in fact. I'll just take this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of it. So let's go ahead and Command J. And if I turn everything off except that, what you can see is that I just have her face selected and nothing else. And some of her hair, which could have been removed, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do now with this new layer selected is that I want to blur it a tad. So let's go under filters. And let's go ahead to blur. And which blur do they want us to use? We want surface blur. So let's go ahead with, where is it? It's the bottom one down here. Okay. So we're just blurring just that one layer and nothing else. We're going to change the threshold to, let's see, make the amount 5 pixels, which it's already set at. And we want the threshold level to be set to 10, which I have it already set. And it's softening it just a little bit. Okay. Now I could do it to the whole image. That would be another option for us. So if I turn that off, back on, you can see, you can't see on your screen, but it's very, very subtle. So I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the layer, the whole layer, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a duplicate of it. And let's see the difference here. So I'm going to hit Command J for that so that I have a copy of that. And again, I'm going to apply surface blur. So surface blur, and then we're going to change the opacity to 40%. So let's go again under filters and go to blur. Let's go to surface blur. Okay. And that should change. That's affecting everything in this case. You see where we're at. So it blurs the hair, it blurs her dress, it blurs everything. The way I would do it would be just to blur her skin just a little bit and nothing else. And then what we're going to do with that copied layer is that I'm going to change the opacity because it affected her eyes and everything too, that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the opacity to 40%, number one, so that it doesn't blur it too much. Let's see. There we go. So we've changed that, but it will also blur her eyes a little, and we don't want that. So now I just need to use the eraser tool. Come back in here. I'm going to use a little bit larger eraser. And where her eyes are, we're going to go ahead and make sure that it's on the blurred layer. I'm going to go ahead and erase that to make it sharp again. And the same here. And that's pretty much all we need to do. So we have these different options available to us. Okay, so this is the changed one that we did. It softened everything else. Let's turn this one off. Let's leave this one on, and let's try this again. Here's that smart, oh, wait. Let's turn this one on and zoom in a little bit so we can see if the changes that have taken place here. Oh, come on. There we go. So if you zoom way in and I turn on that section here, you'll see that her face is considerably blurred. Okay. But because it's just selecting the skin tones, you know, I can come back in here and I can change the opacity of it to 40%. And I don't have to worry so much about, maybe a little bit more. I'm going to change it to 50%. I don't have to worry about, because I'm only selecting in this version, the skin tones and nothing else. I don't have to worry about erasing part of it and bringing it back. So it's up to you which of the two versions you choose. And that's pretty much it for that. today. We've taken a good image and we've improved it, I think. Made some aesthetic changes. Maybe some people would want it just left alone, but cameras are not perfect. People who shoot them are not perfect. Shoot the photographs. So it's worthwhile going back in and making some tweaks to refine the image and make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Okay, so that's pretty much all we have here for today. Short lecture. Do any of you have any questions before we end today? I don't think we have anything else going here. No questions? No? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so that's it for today. We finished lesson 12. Remember that you are only responsible for lessons 1 through 12, and they will be due on Google Drive by the end of the semester. In addition to that, what we're going to be doing is probably start watching a series of videos on retouching and restoring photographs that I've made available to all of you. They're already on Canvas, but I will be showing them here on my webinars for several weeks now, so that you can get an idea of a whole variety of techniques for working on the final project. Now, as you're finishing the digital painting, you might want to be thinking about the final project and thinking about photographs for that I will talk about on another day, about some places to look for to get your images if you don't have any images readily available at home. So what you might think about doing, though, is deciding if you do have some nice old photographs at home that are family photographs that you would like to retouch and restore. And the goal would be to return those photographs to original condition, if not better than the original. And then from that, that will be your final project. You'll have the lessons and the final project to do after the digital painting, and then we are done for the semester. Okay. So I hope that I've gone through this in a fairly clear and succinct fashion. Again, working with Camera Raw and Photoshop together to improve an image. And this is principally what you'll be doing for your final assignment. Hopefully, though, you'll see photographs that are available that have had a lot of damage done to them as well. And, it could be water stains. It could be that there's a crease in the photograph. Any number of things, are potentially problematic that you'll have to work with and to restore and to retouch. Okay. So if that's it, I'm going to say goodbye. That's all we have for today. And I will see everybody Wednesday. I will have this posted on Google, on YouTube in a very short time. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye and I'm going to pause the recording unless you have questions. So